So, I think I got that. And then anybody who wants to help them, please help them. Okay. So many of you probably don't know that the village started out of a romance. This is a little unknown secret, that my little brother was in love with Rod's worship leader at his old church. See, Rod came down here to start a church, and you know what the name he gave for this church? Rock the Desert.
It was an outstanding name.
It was an outstanding name. And he had this girl who was leading worship, and my brother really liked her. And so in his infinite wisdom, he thought that Rod and I, who were doing two different ministries, would work well together.
Biggest lie ever foisted on mankind.
So we went to Good Egg, which is where he meets everybody, in 1999, somewhere early in 1999, because my brother arranged this meeting. Now, I don't remember much of the meeting except leaving and thinking, I have nothing in common with this guy and he doesn't know anything. Now, I remember I was 29.
And I remember going there and going, who is this crazy young kid, and what does he think he knows at all about church or discipleship or planting or even God? And I just thought, and you know what? He had to bring backup. He didn't even just come by himself. He brought one of his friends.
That's right.
That's how scared he was of me. It is true.
It is true. I did bring backup. So then we never talked to each other after that.
For a year.
For a year. And so in 1999, so it was actually probably in 98 that we had that meeting. But in 99, I don't know. Anyway, in the ministry that I was in, it was in a relatively large church, and they got a new pastor, and the new pastor came to me and our leadership team and said, hey, where you guys are going, where the church is going, is not working. So you need to leave. So they had a big service and sent us off. And so we had like these 70 college and single people, and none of us knew where to go or what to do. And this young pastor showed up, and he said, hey, why don't you all just come to my church? The director of Campus Crusades here. The director of Young Life is here. We love young people. It's good. He started meeting with me. I was very excited. We almost joined his church. Well, we did join his church. And then in December of 99.
And then he left.
Yes, in December 99, in an elder meeting, he said to all of his elders, I'm leaving. I'm not cut out for ministry, and you should hire Eric. Now, you should know that I'm super loyal, so I was working for a hospital, and I wasn't going to go work for another church. And because I'm so loyal that if none of you are here, I would just preach to the chairs and go to thrift stores to get more chairs, and that would be how I do my ministry of chairs. Like, I'm loyal to the space. Well, that hospital closed down in December. Like, I just had to shut the hospital down because I wasn't going to quit. And then I started working for the church. Now, here's the crazy part. In February of 2000, this is what I do know, Emily McConnell, where are you? Because she was right there. And she was pregnant with Kelly over here. And she happened to just start going to that church. And somehow, mysteriously, she bumped into Rod. I don't even remember.
It wasn't a mystery at all. And I was meeting at the Cumberland Presbyterian Church.
And so you visited it like a museum.
And he loved Rock the Desert Ministries, which was not Cumberland Presbyterian.
So somehow Emily bumped into Rod, or both of you.
Which is why you should always go with your first instinct.
So Emily said to me, do you know this guy, Rod? And you should talk to him. And I was like, great. So I kind of delayed it, and then I called Rod, and we went to Good Egg again, and we ate. But this time, Rock the Desert wasn't doing well. Most people had left. My ministry had completely almost gone away, and the church we were in had just lost their pastor, and they were super sad, and everything seemed bad, and nothing was going the way I wanted it to. So I said, hey, why don't you come help us? And so in 2001, so a year later, he comes and he helps us. And here's how he helps us. He preaches a sermon and says, if you don't go do what I tell you to do, I'm preaching the same sermon next week. And nobody did what he told them to do.
And I did.
And he preached the same sermon.
And then I threatened I'd preach it a third time if they didn't do what I said.
So yeah, he was, anyway, we had to close that church down.
And that church closed.
So in... I think it was somewhere in May of 2001, I looked at Rod, maybe the last time we were sitting in the office together, and I said, what are we going to do? And he said, let's take a flyer and plant a church because we failed at everything else by ourselves. We should try it together. So that's how the village started. We got our 501c status in July of 2001. We opened a bank account in October of 2001. And so if you know that October is when we do our belonging service. We celebrate opening a bank account because that's kind of how, becoming an adult, you get a bank account. So that's how the village started.
And then,
do you have any corrections to that?
Yeah, lots.
Okay.
But and we I had also closed down a church, which is the whole reason I was in Tucson. So closing down ministries, we are experts. So if you ever need something closed down,
businesses,
just let us know. Businesses, churches, we're good at closing things. So hospitals, yes. Entire hospitals go bankrupt just because of us. And what Eric said to me, Rod, could you help me plant a church? Teach me what you know. And I said,
I never said that.
And I said, he most assuredly did. And I said, I can only tell you what not to do. I can't tell you what to do because I'm a failure. And so that was an important part of the conversation piece that he always forgets because you know his memory. But that was an important part for me because I realized I really didn't know. And then we also talked about who did we want to plant a church for? Like who would God send? And so we talked a lot about that.
Yeah. So we started meeting at this church that's on Tucson and Glen, basically called Bethel. We met in their back room.
No, we didn't start there.
Well, we started in the other room.
We started in the back room of the Messianic Jewish, Beth Shalom.
We lasted there 2 months because we scratched their floors.
Exactly.
And they kicked us out. The other place we lasted 2 years, and they called us a goth church because we had black sheets all the way around. And then I think they didn't really like us because we put Cokes in the freezer and they exploded. And
yeah, that was bad.
That was not a good thing.
Don't put Cokes in the freezer.
So we had to leave, and we went to the YMCA on 4th Avenue.
Can you imagine
the Muse?
Can you imagine the village people at the YMCA?
Yeah, it was. We were in the basement. So we lasted there 2 years, but they blew that building up, and now there are condos behind it. So there's no building, there's no record of us being there. So we closed that building down.
Do you guys see a pattern here?
Yes, but so that was 2 years, and so we've been at church for about 4 years by that time, and about the time that it was about to blow up. And they were going to get rid of us, and we had no place to go. We put that on our website, and a Lutheran pastor at Our Savior's Lutheran Church just happened to be reading our website because he was typing in cool alternative churches. And there you go. It was us. And so he calls me, or Rod, I can't remember who.
It was me.
It was you because you're more important.
Yeah. It's my phone.
Yeah, it was your phone number. It was all over the internet. I didn't want my phone on the internet.
So you put mine on.
Yes. You can see how this relationship works. So he said, hey, we have a back room, and we know you want a building, so we'll charge you a little, basically nothing. Pay for the cleaning of the building and a little bit of rent. You guys raise money. So I think we lasted there for 3 years.
Yes.
But somewhere in there, here's the miracle of this building. Somewhere in there, some mysterious person, again called Rod.
Of course.
And they said, we have
$300,000
if you can raise $100,000
that we would like to give to you. However, it's going to be an anonymous donation. You will never know who the giver of the $300,000 is. The condition, however, is that you have to raise $100,000.
Now, I want you to understand, at that time, our budget was about $70,000 a year, and Rod and I raised about $30,000 of that every year. So raising $100,000 seemed a lot
crazy.
Like
raising $100 million. It
yes.
didn't really matter what number you put out there. We
yes.
weren't going to raise that kind of money.
But you guys all set to writing letters, and we...
No, not at first.
No?
At first, we had a big meeting, and we talked about what we could do. And because most of you were in college back then...
We're not here.
And, yeah, not most of you, but most of the villagers were in college at that point. They came up with great ideas like car washes and bake sales. Because, how many bake sales would you have to raise $100,000? As fabulous of bakers as many of you are, which we'll experience later, it would take 20 years of bake sales, I think, to raise $100,000 and car washes. But the ideas were nice. We tried that. And then we said we would write our rich relatives.
And so you did write your rich relatives, and that helped some. But in
little.
that, we had lots of conversations, and that's where Healing the City one person at a time comes from. Because we decided we have to boil down what we're about so we can tell people. And so that's sort of where that idea came from. And we threw a big banquet. To raise money.
In Phoenix.
And it was fun. And people had a lot of fun doing that. Well, we raised about $70,000 total. And then we were all tired. And we couldn't do it anymore. And so at that point, we just called and said, hey, we can't raise any more money, so do you think you'll just give us the $300,000 anyway? And they said, sure, that sounds great. We just wanted you to try. So we tried, and now, in the midst of all of that, this building was open, and people were meeting at it, 4 people. And so in that year before we got this building and while we were raising money, my dad showed up here to one of their services and told them in his very prophetic way, you should give this building to my son. And they looked at him and said, if your son's willing to pay $425,000, well, it's actually $475 at that time, we'll give him the building. And he was like, well, that's not going to happen. So a year later, we came back to this. And we said, hey, we only have $425,000, and you'll have to carry $150 of that. Will you be willing to do that? And they said,
wait.
Oh, what?
And the real estate guy said, I won't even bring your offer to them because they just turned down an offer for $475. So why in the world would they accept $425?
That's true. But miraculously, they did choose.
It wasn't miraculous. I stared them down and said, go deliver the offer anyway.
That's right. And they said yes.
And they said yes.
They did say yes. And here's the thing is, right while this was happening, the Lutheran pastor calls us and says, we're demolishing the space that you're meeting in, and you need to get into that building fast. And so while we're working out the deal, we're talking to the real estate agent and saying, can we get in the building to meet even though we don't own the building? And he said, I don't think that works. But they let us do it anyway. And so that's how we ended up here 8 years ago.
And the interesting part to me was that, and the beautiful part was that so many of us are involved with foster care and helping kids and taking care of adopting kids and special needs kids and all those good things. And when we put the $300,000 down, that money went directly to an orphanage in Texarkana. The people who sold the building took the money and sent it to Texarkana to an orphanage there. And all of our payments to this day have gone to support that orphanage that needed to buy and get a new building. And I love that not only were we blessed by that anonymous gift, but an orphanage in Texarkana was also blessed by that financial gift.
So, yes, sir. Well, the Lutheran Church remodeled that room.
the Bethel Church, it closed, and then, yeah, everything we touch closes. Lamentations 3:22-26 says, "Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." And then these words from Psalm 67, "May God be gracious to us and bless us, and make his face shine on us, so that your ways may be known on earth, your salvation among all nations. May the peoples praise you, God. May all the people praise you. May the nations be glad and sing for joy. For you rule the peoples with equity and guide the nations of the earth. May the peoples praise you, God. May all the people praise you. This land yields its harvest. God, our God, blesses us. May God bless us still, so that all the ends of the earth will fear him." I love those words because, to me, there are two words that stand out: the faithfulness of God, right? My faithfulness is kind of like the morning mist. It just comes and goes. God's faithfulness is very, very, very persistent. He never, ever fails us. And in giving us this beautiful building and in giving us this community and helping us all along the way with little gifts, big gifts, closing down hospitals so Eric would come and join us, having us both be humbled by our own attempts to do ministry. God was faithful through all that to us and to this community. And then, besides God's faithfulness, is his desire to bless us. And he blessed us with this place. I remember that first time we walked in, and it was weird. It was all those orange pews all facing that direction, and a huge pulpit up there, and those big leather chairs. Those were there were two of those on either side. Eric and I would sit in those and look very, pastoral and, well, not reverential probably. And so it was just really fun to walk in here and say, suddenly, wow, this is the place that God's given us, and to do what we want to do with and to use for his purposes. And so it was fun because we sat with the first group of people and we all split up, and in one corner we had people who wanted to work on landscaping, and another corner we had people who wanted to work on the sanctuary area here, another corner everybody who wanted to deal with the kitchen and the eating areas, and another group of people that wanted to deal with kids ministries. And just the sheer joy of us taking possession of this beautiful gift that God gave us, and being able to now use it to minister and to bring healing to people of Tucson and to each other, one person at a time.
Well, before we open the mic, I'll just start. And what we're going to do is we'll just pass this mic around. But I guess what I want to say, one of the things that I really love about the Village, and there's a lot that I love about the Village, is that when young men and women stand up here to preach, I was a young man preaching. I started at 29. I listened to my old sermons. I'm sorry. I'm probably sorry for right now,
and you
too.
Should be.
But I also understand how gracious this community has been to me, not only to let me stand up here, but to actually say, I will try to take what you're saying or figure out what the heck you're saying and apply it to my life. And I have seen how you have shaped me into a man of God, and how you have helped direct me and encouraged me to be a good pastor. And so I love that about this community. And so when other young people are up here, I'm just excited about the way that you engage them and allow them to offer Scripture to you. With that said, we're going to turn this mic over to anybody who'd like to just stand up and say, hey, this is what God has done here in this community. And I think we have our first person. Or at least our third generation pastor.
Suddenly you turn shy. Now you're shy? Okay.
I'm not going to stand up because I'm pregnant and I don't want to. But it's funny hearing those stories because I started coming to the village when I was 18 or 19. And I was like super involved in Navigator. Some of you know that what that is. It's a college Christian ministry. But I started going, and Hannah was my Bible study leader, would pick me up with her friend. Some of you know Ryan Moore, in the Vanagon from my dorm, like one of those old 70s Vanagons. We'd go down to 4th Avenue, and I was from a really tiny Amish town, and I grew up Catholic. So coming to Tucson was like this cool, epic adventure. And then I found the village, and I was like, this place is so weird. It's so awesome. And Sue had dreads and was pregnant with Elliot. And Ashton was really little, and Anna and Kelly, they were just so tiny, and Jesse. But it's crazy to see, like, I don't know, just like I remember coming to the village and being like, these people like really are all about like the Bible and what Jesus said and who Jesus is, and like not trying to like get it right and like some sort of like, oh, we don't talk about our sin because that's makes us look like shameful. But it's like, no, we are shameful. We have to talk about our sin. So it's this beautiful picture of, I think, freedom in a lot of ways coming from the Bible Belt. It was a very exposing place. I'm sure we've all felt that at the village, but it was also, really freeing. So here we are. What is that? That was 2004, guys. That was a long time ago. So 13 years later, and we have our own building, and it's crazy to see. We used to have a cry room over there, guys. It was terrible. Oh, it was so bad. So, and we had the banquet the day Alice was born. If you ever see Alice running around, it's getting old. So I'm going to pass this on now.
So my husband, Michael, he was part of the village back in the earlier days, back in 2005 to 2007. And I was not. Michael and I met up in Colorado in grad school. And after we finished, we, had a good community, but, it was a grad student community. And when we both graduated, we were wondering where to go next. And Michael, throughout our relationship, had told me about the village and just how he had just loved the village and just how they did ministry and lived life together. And I had never really experienced anything like that. And so when we were deciding where to go afterwards, we decided on just coming to Tucson. And we didn't have jobs, and we didn't really know what would happen. I didn't know hardly any of you. He knew some of you from when he was here before, but there were a lot of new faces. But we took the risk, and God brought us here, and it's just been an awesome past almost 5 years now that we've been back, and we bought a house right across the street from our pastor and his family and the Brunsons, and God's just really, we both have jobs and have really just integrated us really well into this community, and we love being a part of it. And it's just been awesome to be a part of something really good.
Well, in short, my life has been turned upside down since coming to the village. I came almost 8 years ago when the building was still being remodeled. And I came because my in-laws, Samantha and Sean, were neighbors with longtime members here that are no longer members. But I needed to come back to church. I have a Mormon background, so but I had not been to church and kind of fell away for about 8 years into drugs and different scene. So I needed to come back to church. And I had 2 little kids at that point. And I resonate with Lane coming in here and thinking, this place is really wild. The pastor has flip-flops, and nobody is wearing tights or dress shoes, and the walls are weird. So I just thought it was really weird. But what it's taught me is that a relationship with God, like what that's like. I never knew that growing up, even in church. I didn't know what it meant to have a relationship. So that's been really different and cool thing to grow in for me. And also the community aspect. Just getting to know people and having them come alongside you in a way that I did not know before. So you also said what funny things that we remember. So Sean and Samantha, for those of you who don't know, Sean was diagnosed with cancer and died 3 months later. And I don't want to get caught up on that part, but they had his memorial service here. And if you... Is that my baby? Anyway, so Sean, he had IBS. He had IBS. And he was always in the bathroom. So what's funny is that at the memorial service, all of our toilets backed up. And we didn't have toilets at his service, so it was like Sean's revenge or something. It was really kind of funny and appropriate. So, yeah.
Cool.
I'd just like to say that I'm going to wear tights next week just for Karina. No, okay, never mind. There's a lot of memories that I could share. I've been coming here for almost 7 years, my wife Corey and I. I've seen a lot of really awesome things. I've seen your kids grow up. You guys have blessed us to allow us to think of your kids as our kids as well. Thank you for that. I've seen people married. I've seen friends buried. I've seen a lot of stuff, but I think that the one memory that I can think of that really encapsulates my relationship with Jesus through this church, it was a couple summers ago when I was delivering a sermon, and I had a severe panic attack right in the middle of my preaching, to the point that I couldn't breathe. I could barely stand. I thought I was going to fall over. I actually considered that there was a possibility that there was something seriously wrong and I was going to die. And the amount of love and grace that everybody who was here showed me, and even the people that weren't here when they listened to the sermon afterwards, the amount of compassion that they showed me. When I was at my worst, the village was at its best. And that really is not only this church, but it really is my the way that I see Christ, is that when I'm at my worst, he's at his best. And I have experienced such tremendous healing because of the way that Jesus uses each and every one of you. And I'm far from perfect, but I've come a long way because of the love that this church has. And I really appreciate that.
Hello. So, I'm Anna, and most of you know me because I'm one of the Brunsons that Karina mentioned, and I'm one of the kids that Lane mentioned. I've been at this church my entire life. I guess technically I'm 2 years older than it, but I don't have any memories that weren't at this church. And the thing I like most about this church is how important community is. Because, I've lived at a community house with the Seepins and the Brunsons, and then there's the church where everything is community. We've got our chairs in a circle instead of all pointing the same direction. And I don't know. That's just telling, I think. And I like the group parenting thing that we do. I think that's good. I just really like the community. And yeah, we're growing, and that's weird for me, but also good. Okay, I'm done.
Anybody else?
Mike and I have been coming since, I don't know, however long Mike said, and 2010. And I grew up in a free evangelical church where, like Karina was saying, dresses and tights every Sunday and all that, super, super rigid. And this has just been really amazing for me and for Mike too, just to have this kind of church experience where everything is not so rigid and structured. I remember the first time that my parents came with us, and I can just see my mom looking around like, well, this is different. And she's like, this is nice. I think I kind of like this. I mean, I've never been in a church where I can actually sit and crochet and take my shoes off before, and it's kind of epic. And I'm really, really glad to be here. And gosh, as for memories, probably I would say maybe the first time I decided to cook for everybody. I grew up in, like I was saying, in a small town, small church. We did a spaghetti feed for 100 people when I was in youth group. And I'm thinking, I can handle that. We did spaghetti, and all of a sudden, I'm thinking, I'm going to be super ambitious. I'm going to do this and this and this. And then all of a sudden, here come all these hordes. I'm thinking, do I have enough food? What did I do? What's going on? Is everything going to be okay? And I remember afterwards, Ellie was 5, and she came up to me. She's like, hi, Corey. She's like, I just wanted to tell you everything you made was delicious, and it was so yummy. And I was like, thank you, Jesus. So, yeah, I'm really grateful to be at a church that's letting me show my gifts and is helping me learn what those are. And that have accepted me warts and all, because sometimes I have a hard time accepting myself. So I'm glad I'm somewhere that does that. So, yeah.
So before I came to the village, I had been going to a Baptist church for about 28 years that my parents had gone to, which everybody knew me in that Baptist church. And I left that church and started going to Calvary Chapel. And I was going to Calvary Chapel for about a year. And during that year, I met Karen, and I started to date Karen. And she told me about the village and invited me to come to the village. So going from the Baptist church to Calvary Chapel was a pretty big transition for me, as it was so different from the regimented Baptist church that I was in. But then going to the village, where it was completely different, very strange to me, and I thought, this place is so weird. Wow.
That was the black curtain. The black curtain's face.
The black curtain, it was at the Lutheran church. But what I really started to notice in comparing this is that at Calvary Chapel, it was the pastor there. He had several services in the morning. So we would sing. He would run in. He would give his message, and then he would run out. Some other assistant pastor would close, and then it was everybody's got to get out of the Calvary Chapel building because the next service is going to come in. So there was no community, no getting together to talk, nobody getting to know anything. So I still was going to Calvary Chapel because I still thought the village was weird. But I kept going because of Karen, and then it started to become the place that I considered to be my church. Even when Karen was out of town once, I still came to the village, because I like that after church was over, people would come and ask you how you were doing, and we would eat together, and you get to spend time with people after church, not just we're there to show up and everybody get out. So that meant a lot to me, that we eat together after church. I think my story to tell is when I got engaged to Karen, I think we came and announced it at some party was happening. Julie's 40th birthday. So, but at that party, Rod was there at that party, and everybody's all happy, but Rod pulled me aside and he said, "Now, Karen has been with the village a long time, and just so you know, if you ever hurt her, I will kill you." And I believe him still to this day.
I guess I'll tell how I came to this church. So, I've been a Christian my whole life. And when I hit my 20s, my personal experience became, wow, going to church just really sucks when you're single. That was my experience. And I think a lot of people have a similar experience going to American churches where everyone sits in family groups, and then all the small groups were based on life stage. And it just became really awkward. A couple of things happened in 2001 that were pretty dramatic for me. I was a good friend with Emily. She almost died right after Kelly was born, and that was really traumatic. At that very same time, my grandmother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And the loneliness of being single, and my roommate at the time, I moved in with her, and then the next month she got engaged, and I was having to move out. All of that stuff really came together, and I was feeling kind of down for a long time in 2001, and that was during the time that we were meeting in the room that the floor got scraped. But before the floor got scraped, I went to a service, in my first service. Some of you remember Joe Raftis. And Joe, at the end of the service, got up in front, and he went into a rant. He suffered from schizophrenia, and he went to a rant. And the way that people handled that, I decided, okay, this is a safe place, and I'm going to come back. Yeah, and I kept coming here, and so I guess I was part of the church before we were officially a church. My most distinct memory is the time I was at the leadership meeting, and some crazy stuff happened. But what I really appreciate about this community is God has really used this community to teach me about my spiritual gifts, which I was already aware of, but I didn't know how to use them in the church communities I'd been part of. And I think no matter where I'd been, I think God would have shown me how to use those. But I really appreciate how they've played out here.
I just have to put in my totally opposite, not from a Baptist church background. I grew up overseas, and when I first moved to the States when I was 18, the first church I went to was a Baptist church, and I was like, wow, this is weird. And there was even a special little dress code, which people weren't aware of, that like in the evening service, you could wear Bermuda shorts, which were longer shorts. But in the morning service, you had to wear like a skirt or something like that if you were a girl. Like it took me a while to figure that out, but you know, all those little things. So anyway, when I finally came to the village, I was like, okay. Now I don't have to worry.
So I was going to that church where the pastor left and decided he didn't want to be a pastor anymore. And it's sort of, okay, now what are we going to do? It's like, well, we could follow Eric and see what he's doing. So we started doing that, and we just kept doing it. And I thought, well, we'll find a church one of these days. I mean, Eric's weird. He lives in a community house with people living in his house all the time, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. And now I'm like that too.
Keep doing what Eric's doing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Miss. Hello. Okay. Drugs. Oh, it's coming on and off. Hello? Drugs is the first word. Yes. After quitting several churches where I felt like I fit in and didn't really feel like I could be myself and allow people to get to know me and feel like I had to get back. Being a homeschool mom, you can really get into a lifestyle of kind of hiding from the world because you have to be home, you have to hit the books every day and toe that line. And so after going to several churches, over a decade, well, really just 2 churches, one for 8 years and then another for 5. I really had begun to hide in a profound way, and I wasn't really allowing people to get to know me and to love me. In that capacity, like with people really knowing who I was. And the village really disproved that and has not only taught me that I can be loved and that people can love me without judgment because of like a traumatic past, but has also shown me how to love when it hurts. And so our marriage has been healed through many, many hours of Eric's time and Julie Brunson's time, and it's been a really great experience.
Are we winding down?
My name is Mark. Hello. Early in 2011, I was at a church, and a lot of stuff happened, and I ended up having to leave the church and move back to Arizona, and kind of spent most of 2011 wandering, not really doing anything. And so I actually mark my anniversary with the village. Mark it. I mark my anniversary with the village on Super Bowl Sunday, even though I started coming like 2 Sundays before that, I think. But I remember in 2012 coming to Super Bowl Sunday and sitting with Elliot the entire Super Bowl. We're not going to talk about the outcome of that one. That one was hard. But I feel like I get up every year on Super Bowl Sunday and say, this is my second, this is my third year, this is my fourth, this is my 5th year, and every year I look back at the year before and I think, man, I knew nothing. And God has used the village to pound on my heart and my head, and he has broken down a lot of the walls that I had built up. And it's a beautiful place. And I'm married now to a villager, so that's pretty cool too. And I'm going to be a dad. Yay. Of a villager.
I have one last story. Last year was a really hard year. My son Derek got the swine flu and ended up in the hospital. Ended up in intensive care, ended up in a coma, and should have died. He had what is known as fatal ARDS. That's what they call it. And I remember the first night in the hospital when he was crashing and we didn't know what was going on, and it was horrible and scary. And Kathy said, Rod, you need to call people who pray and get them praying, because she understands what the doctors were saying, and they were saying he's not going to live. And I called Eric, and Eric put out a thing, and I walked out of the room, Derek's room, and I walked into a lobby full of 25 villagers, all praying and pleading with God for Derek's life. And God answered that prayer in a beautiful way by bringing healing to Derek. And then late last year, I have been walking with my mom as we moved her from a care facility into a memory care unit, and then into hospice care, and then she went to be with Jesus, which was rich and beautiful. And the day we were going to have the funeral was the Thanksgiving soup supper. And every year I've attended the Thanksgiving soup supper, and every year I've made my famous cauliflower soup, fried cauliflower soup, which you all know is the best, despite what Eric says. And I missed, for the first time, I was going to miss that. And people from the village said, Rod, we'd like to come to the funeral. And I said, no, please. The Thanksgiving soup supper is so precious and special. Please don't bother going to Phoenix to do that. But before the funeral, we walked into the sanctuary of the Phoenix Christian Reformed Church in Phoenix, and I looked up, and 4 villagers had come anyway. And I wept. And I wept and wept, not just my loss, but the beauty of being lifted up by people in this community. People say, what's the best thing about the village for you, Rod? And I say that God raised up a community that loves and cares, a community that follows in Jesus' ways, a community that confronts sin, a community that cares deeply and walks with us in all of our trials and tribulations. Thank you for being the village.
We're just going to sing a few more songs together, and then we'll eat and watch a football game together.